The envelope was heavier than it should have been, its thick paper pressed flat against my kitchen table like it carried secrets. The morning sun pushed through the faded curtains and spread across the wood, catching every scratch and dent carved by years of dinners, homework, and lonely cups of coffee. I held it carefully, tracing the neat handwriting I knew by heart. My son's. For a brief, reckless moment, I believed it was an invitation. Maybe the olive branch I had prayed for. I slid a finger under the flap, the paper sighing as it tore. What spilled out wasn't joy or welcome. It was a stack of bills. $60,000 for a castle draped in lights. $25,000 for wine and food flown in from countries I'd only ever taught about in geography class. $5,000 for a Paris suite with a postcard view. At the bottom, Marcus's hand, neat and deliberate. Mom, be thankful I let you help. Send the money fast. The words seared deeper than any insult. Be thankful. I crushed the page into my palm until it cracked like brittle leaves, then smoothed it flat again, forcing myself to see it clearly. My eyes drifted to the framed photo beside me. Marcus at 9, gap-toothed, his small hand gripping mine after a soccer game. How had that boy, who once whispered that I was the strongest person he knew, turned into a man who erased me from his wedding but expected me to foot the bill? I walked to the sink, splashed cold water on my face, and caught my reflection in the window pane. The ring my mother had passed down glimmered faintly in my palm, a reminder of endurance, of family bonds meant to outlast storms. My kitchen smelled faintly of yesterday's coffee, warm and bitter. Anger flared, sharp and hot, but it didn't swallow me whole. Instead, it cooled into something steadier. I pulled out the chair again, opened my old computer, and watched the blue glow wash over the scattered papers. If Marcus and Sarah thought they could cut me out while draining my savings, they were wrong. His note had called me a problem. Maybe it was time to show him what a problem really looked like. Rain tapped the glass in slow rhythm, as if marking the start of a countdown. I turned the bill over one last time, its bold numbers glaring up at me like a dare. My lips curved into a thin smile. What would you do if your own child sent you a bill instead of an invitation? I woke the next morning before dawn, the room still gray with winter light. My coffee pot hissed and gurgled, filling the kitchen with that familiar sharp scent. I dressed with more care than usual. Black slacks, a clean blouse, and the ring on my finger. Not armor exactly, but enough to remind me who I was. My heart beat steady as I grabbed my worn purse and the thick envelope of bills. Downtown Denver felt like another world compared to my small neighborhood. Glass buildings stretched into the cold sky, reflecting the weak sun. Jennifer Walsh's office sat high above the street, polished and professional. The receptionist's perfume hung sweet in the lobby as she led me in. Jennifer herself rose from behind a glossy desk, all charm and perfect tailoring. "Mrs. Santos," she greeted warmly, her handshake firm. "We're thrilled to be working with your family." I sat across from her as she flipped open a thick file stuffed with contracts and fabric swatches. She talked quickly. Flower arrangements, musicians, a string quartet, a chocolate fountain. I let her go on until her words blurred into a background hum. Finally, I placed the envelope squarely on her desk. "Did Marcus mention," I asked, voice calm but sharp, "that I'm not invited to this wedding I'm supposedly paying for?" Her pen slipped from her fingers, clattering against the desk. "Not invited?" I leaned forward. "Banned, that's the word he used, yet he still had the nerve to send me a bill for $90,000. Color drained from her face. She shifted in her chair, smoothing her skirt with nervous hands. "That's unusual. He told me everything was handled privately." "Consider this my correction," I said. "There will be no payment until he speaks to me like a son, not like a collector." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of her office heater. Then she cleared her throat. "Without the balance, we can't move forward. Vendors expect final checks. Deposits are complicated." I stood slowly, sliding the envelope back into my purse. Then tell Marcus the wedding is on hold, and remind him perfect plans can fall apart faster than anyone thinks. Her eyes widened, but she nodded. I'll call him today. I walked out into the cold air, the city noise rushing around me. My breath rose in white clouds as I felt something inside shift. Power. Not complete, but the beginning of it. Driving home, memories crowded me. Marcus as a teenager, slamming doors and blaming me for his father's absence. Sarah's dismissive glance at Easter when she pushed away my cookies. Every slight lined up like dominoes. Now, finally, I was the one placing the next tile. Still, I knew I couldn't face this alone. Marcus would fight dirty. He always had. I needed eyes, ears, proof. My mind turned to Rosa, my neighbor, my friend from long ago. Her daughter had once been close to Marcus before he dropped her for shinier company. Rosa worked part-time as an event coordinator with photography on the side. She'd know how to handle evidence. I dialed before doubt could settle in. Rosa, it's Maria. Can we meet? I need your help. She hesitated only a second. Of course, honey. The diner on Broadway? An hour? An hour later, we hugged in a corner booth that smelled of cinnamon and coffee. Rosa's eyes had grown softer with time, her laugh lines deep, but her grip was strong. What's going on? She asked, sliding into the seat. I told her everything. The ban, the bill, the meeting with Jennifer. Her expression hardened. That boy, she muttered. He dropped my daughter years ago when she wouldn't cheat for him, said she lacked ambition. He's been using people his whole life. Her anger lit a spark in me. Over coffee refills and the clink of forks, we hatched a plan. Rosa would bring her camera, slip around the venue on the wedding day, capture whatever chaos might unfold. Evidence, leverage, truth. We sealed our pact with a handshake across the table. My reflection stared back at me in the chrome napkin holder, cheeks flushed, not from shame, but determination. Later that night, Rosa came by with a small bag of gadgets. We sat in my living room, lamps casting long shadows on the old rug. She unpacked a tiny recorder, discreet cameras, apps on her phone. Colorado's one-party consent, she explained, showing me how to hit record mid-call. They won't know, but you'll have proof. I practiced, my hands steadier than I expected. The small green light blinked like a heartbeat, a promise I wouldn't be silenced again. You gave him everything, Rosa said softly. Don't let him rewrite that story. Her words stung, but in a good way, like antiseptic on a wound. When she left, the rain had turned to sleet, tapping against the windows in relentless rhythm. I walked through the quiet house, checking locks, testing the devices she'd shown me. The kitchen smelled of chocolate from the cocoa we'd shared. On the table, the photo of young Marcus stared back at me, gap-toothed and innocent. I touched the glass, my reflection overlapping his. Somewhere between that boy and this man, we had lost each other. But I hadn't lost myself. The phone buzzed suddenly on the counter, Marcus's name lighting the screen. I let it ring, then ring again. His voicemail came minutes later, voice tight with controlled panic. Mom, Jennifer says you're pulling out. Call me back. We need to fix this. Fix this. As if betrayal could be patched with a check. I replayed it twice, listening to the gravel edge in his tone. My mother's ring caught the lamplight, cool and unyielding. I whispered to the empty kitchen. No more fixing. Not like this. The rain drummed harder, the house settling around me. Tomorrow, the real storm would begin. The voicemail still echoed in my ears long after the phone stopped buzzing. Mom, Jennifer says you're pulling out. Call me back. We need to fix this. His tone, half panic, half command, was so familiar. It reminded me of the way he used to bark at me as a teenager when I refused to buy him the newest sneakers. that old mixture of need and entitlement. I sat at the kitchen table, the dim light overhead casting long shadows across the bills spread before me. The old computer screen glowed faintly in the corner, its fan humming like a steady reminder that the world was watching. The rain outside turned into icy needles against the glass. My hand drifted to the photo of Marcus as a boy, but I stopped short. Enough of that. Enough of reaching for softness when what I needed was steel. The phone buzzed again, vibrating across the table until it nearly fell off the edge. I let it ring, watching the screen flash his name over and over like a warning sign. Finally, I pressed play on the next voicemail. Mom, this is serious. The caterer is threatening to cancel. The venue's asking for extra fees every day you delay. You're making things worse for everyone. Stop being difficult and just send the money. I exhaled slowly, pressing the tips of my fingers into the table until the wood dented slightly under the pressure. Difficult. That's what he called me. After years of carrying him on my back, years of double shifts and skipped meals, he had the gall to say I was making his life harder. I whispered the word out loud, difficult, letting it roll around my tongue like a sour candy. No, I wasn't difficult. I was finally drawing a line. The third voicemail came minutes later, his voice sharper, cracking under strain. Mom, seriously, everything is falling apart. You owe us this. After everything you did to this family, this is the least you can do. That jab landed hard, right where he knew it would. My chest tightened, memories spilling in uninvited. Him at 16, shouting that I was weak, that his father left because of me, the words that once hollowed me out. But tonight, something inside me refused to cave. Instead, the insult lit a fuse. I reached for the recorder Rosa had given me, small and discreet, its green light winking like a conspirator. If he wanted to accuse, to twist the knife, then let the record keep every syllable. When the phone rang again, I waited until the fourth ring before answering. My voice was steady, even calm. Hello, Marcus. Finally, he snapped, his voice raw with frustration. What the hell are you doing? Jennifer says you're refusing to pay for anything. You're sabotaging the entire wedding. The accusation shot across the line like a bullet. I stood, pacing slowly across the kitchen, grounding myself in the familiar creak of the old floorboards. Sabotaging? I repeated evenly. You banned me from your wedding, Marcus. You sent me a bill like I was just a sponsor, not your mother. Remember the note? Be grateful. Silence stretched for a beat, heavy and brittle. Then his voice rose, defensive. Look, it's not like that. Sarah's friends, her family, they have expectations. You're just a teacher, Mom. You wouldn't fit with the image we're trying to build. But the money, you owe it to us. After Dad left, after the struggles you caused, I cut him off, my hand gripping the phone so tight, my knuckles turned white. No, I raised you alone after he abandoned us. I sold my car to pay for your tuition. I gave you everything. Don't you dare twist that into a debt I owe. My voice startled even me. Strong, unwavering, a voice I hadn't used in years, the kind that made a classroom fall silent. You're ruining everything, he shouted. Sarah's furious. The vendors are demanding deposits right now. The venue's threatening extra fees. You're destroying this. I paused, breathing steadily, eyes fixed on my mother's ring lying on the table. It glimmered under the overhead light, cool and unyielding. Fix what you broke, Marcus. Talk to me like your mother, not your bank account. Until then, no money. There was rustling on the other end. Then Sarah's voice cut through, sharp as glass. Maria, this is absolutely ridiculous. We're trying to build a life together. Your pettiness could cancel everything we've worked for. Think about how embarrassing this will be for everyone. Embarrassing? The word made me laugh, short and humorless. Embarrassing is banning your own mother from your wedding. Embarrassing is demanding she fund your honeymoon while you pretend she doesn't exist. Marcus tried to cut in, his words tumbling fast and messy. It's about duty, Mom. Family contributes to important events. Admit it, you're jealous of my success and Sarah's family's money. The confession slipped out of him like a loose thread, and I yanked it hard. Success? I said softly. Built on using people, then discarding them when they're inconvenient. That's not success, Marcus, that's rot. The line went quiet, except for his ragged breathing. Finally, he snapped. You'll regret this decision. You'll regret it for the rest of your life. Then the line went dead. The sudden silence rang in my ears like a bell. My hands shook slightly as I set the phone down on the table, but not from fear, from release. For the first time in years, I hadn't bowed to his demands. I had said no. The recorder's light blinked steadily, proof captured in its tiny memory. Every insult, every threat, preserved. My chest rose and fell with a rhythm that felt new, almost foreign. Power, quiet but real. I sank into the chair, exhaustion and adrenaline mixing into a strange calm. Outside, the storm built, wind rattling the windows. Inside, my small kitchen felt larger than it ever had, as if the walls themselves had shifted to make room for this new version of me. A knock startled me, gentle, not frantic. I opened the door to find Rosa holding a thermos, her coat dusted with sleet. I thought you might need this, she said, handing me hot tea. I told her everything, every word of the call, every insult, every threat. Her eyes darkened. Good, she said firmly. You finally pushed back. Now we make sure the world hears it too. We sat together, sipping the steaming tea. I could feel the burn on my tongue, sharp and grounding. Rosa pulled out her laptop, her fingers moving quick. I'll back up the recording. We'll keep copies. They can't spin their way out of this if we control the evidence. I nodded, watching the file transfer bar creep across her screen. My reflection shone faintly in the glass, older, more tired, but not beaten. Later, after she left, I stood at the window, watching the sleet harden into snow. Each flake hit the glass with soft persistence. My mind replayed Marcus's words. You'll regret this decision. But instead of fear, I felt clarity. Regret wasn't mine to carry anymore. I turned off the kitchen light, letting the blue glow of the computer fill the room again. On the screen, Sarah's latest post gleamed, a photo of her trying on gowns, the caption bragging about perfection. I almost smiled. Perfection has cracks. Tonight, I'd found one. I whispered to the empty house, to the storm outside, to the boy who used to think I was the strongest person he knew. I'm still here, stronger than you ever imagined, and for the first time in years, I believed it. The house felt heavier than ever, as if the walls themselves leaned closer, pressing me into the chair. My phone glowed with a dozen missed calls, each one another crack across the fragile calm I had built the night before. Marcus's voice still rang in my head, clipped and furious. You'll regret this decision. By late morning, I couldn't bring myself to answer the phone at all. I let it buzz across the table, vibrating against the old wood until the sound turned into a dull heartbeat. The messages piled up, sharp and relentless. Sarah's words landed like stones. You're petty. You're jealous. Everyone knows you've ruined our wedding. I tried to fill the silence with chores. I folded towels, swept crumbs from the counter, boiled water for tea. But their accusations slipped under every door and window, filling the house until it was hard to breathe. By mid-afternoon, the air itself seemed saturated with blame. Then came the envelope. It slid under my front door with a whisper that cut through the noise of the kettle. My name, written in black ink, stared up at me like a dare. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside, crisp letterhead spelled out words I had never wanted to see. Notice of pending legal action. Failure to provide financial support may result in damages, breach of contract, and reputational harm. My chest caved in. I dropped into the nearest chair, the paper trembling in my lap. Legal action, breach of contract, reputational harm. The language was sterile, but the meaning was a blade pressed against my throat. My mind raced. What contract? What agreement? I had never signed anything, yet here it was, a threat dressed in official ink. I pressed both palms against the letter as if I could smother its power. My vision blurred, my breath came shallow. Doubt, like a cold draft, crept in from every corner. Maybe I had made a terrible mistake. Maybe refusing was selfish. What if I lost my savings, my house? What if neighbors believed their version of the story, that I had sabotaged my own son out of spite? The thought pressed tears into my eyes. For a moment, I bent over the table, my forehead against the cool wood, feeling myself fold inward. A knock startled me. When I opened the door, Rosa stood on the porch, her coat zipped to her chin, her hair dotted with sleet. She held a thermos in one hand and a familiar, determined look in her eyes. "Maria," she said softly, stepping inside. Her gaze caught the letter clutched in my hand. "Let me see." I passed it to her without a word. She scanned it quickly, then snorted. "Empty threats. Lawyers send these to scare people. Doesn't mean a thing unless they actually file, and even then they'd need proof." Her calmness settled something in me. "But what if they're serious? What if I lose everything?" She set the paper back on the table like it was nothing more than junk mail. "Then you fight. But you don't fight alone." From her bag, she pulled a slim black recorder and a folder thick with notes. "This is where you start. Every call, every threat, every word, they go here. Colorado law is on your side. One-party consent. You record your own conversations, it's legal. They try to twist reality, you'll have evidence." I touched the recorder with hesitant fingers. It felt heavier than it looked, small but solid. "And if it's not enough?" Her expression softened. "It will be. Truth always rises, Maria. It may take time, but it wins." We sat together at the kitchen table, the letter pushed aside, the recorder between us. She guided me through every step, pressing the button mid-call, saving files, backing them up on a flash drive. Her voice was patient, like mine had been with students learning their first words. "Try it now," she urged. I picked up the phone and dialed her number. Halfway through the ring, I pressed the button. A red light blinked steadily. I spoke a simple sentence. "This is Maria, and I am recording this call." My own voice played back, steady and clear. A strange feeling surged through me, something I hadn't tasted in years. Control. Rosa reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You gave Marcus everything. Don't let him rewrite that story. Keep the record straight." Her words soaked in like warm tea on a cold night. After she left, the house no longer felt like it was collapsing. I brewed chamomile, steam curling up into the dim air, and carried the recorder to the living room. The phone buzzed again. Marcus's name filled the screen. I inhaled, pressed the recorder's button, and answered. His voice crashed through, jagged and frantic. "Mom, this is your last chance. The caterer is pulling out. The venue's charging late fees. Do you realize what you're doing? You're destroying my wedding." The red light glowed steady in my palm. My own voice came calm, even. "I'm not destroying anything, Marcus. You did that the moment you shut me out." There was silence, then a sharp intake of breath. His tone hardened. "You'll regret this. I swear you will." I ended the call before he could say more. The recorder hummed softly, proof captured in its tiny memory. I set it gently beside my mother's ring on the table. 2 small objects, one old and one new, both symbols of survival. My fingers brushed the cool metal, the steady glow, and for the first time that day, my hands did not shake. The letter still lay there, its threats unchanged. But next to the ring and the recorder, it looked less like a weapon and more like a test. I whispered into the quiet, "You wanted me weak, but I'm still standing." Outside, the wind howled across the yard. Inside, a flame flickered to life. It wasn't roaring yet, but it was steady, and it belonged to me. The recorder's red light blinked like a heartbeat on the table. Beside it, my mother's ring glimmered faintly under the kitchen lamp. Together, they formed a small altar to resolve, evidence of where I had been, and a reminder of who I had always been. I sat back in my chair, steady now, and realized the balance of power had shifted. Marcus's threats were no longer just words, they were evidence. Sarah's insults, too, preserved forever in tiny digital files. And that so-called legal letter, meant to terrify me, now lived folded in my drawer beside grocery coupons, a piece of paper stripped of its venom. By morning, I had a plan. Rosa came over early, a scarf wrapped tight around her neck, her eyes alert with the thrill of strategy. She spread her camera equipment across my table while I brewed coffee. "Vendors are already talking," she said. "Cancellations, payment issues, gossip flying around. If Marcus wants to play public image, let's show the truth." Her words settled into me like a rhythm. "I'm ready," I said. We began with the wedding planner. I dialed Jennifer's number, recorder ready, Rosa sitting across from me with her camera already rolling. Jennifer answered quickly, her voice polished but strained. "Mrs. Santos," she began, "Marcus told me there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I cut in. "He banned me from the wedding and then demanded $90,000. I have his note. I have his calls recorded. I want you to know you've been misled." There was a pause, then a sigh that sounded heavier than paperwork. "This is very troubling," she admitted. "We've had difficulties. Some vendors are pulling out due to late payments. If this is true, It's all true," I said firmly. "And if anyone tries to drag my name through the mud, I'll release every word of proof I've gathered." Silence stretched, then her tone shifted. Softer, almost respectful. "I'll speak to Marcus again. Thank you for letting me know." I ended the call, saving the file. Rosa smiled grimly. First crack in their wall. Next came the caterer, a local company called Elegant Eats, proud of their farm-to-table reputation. Rosa dialed this time, speaker on. A man's voice answered, weary but polite. "This is Maria Santos," I said. "I understand you're expecting payment for Marcus and Sarah's wedding. I need to warn you, my name is being used without my consent. If you've been told I'm financing this, it's a lie. I have proof." There was a low whistle on the other end. "That explains a lot. They promised us the balance weeks ago, then claimed their mother was handling it. If you're not, well, that puts us in a bad spot." "I'm sorry you've been misled," I said, my voice steady. "But you deserve to know the truth before you get burned." The man thanked me, his tone shifting from frustration to relief. When the call ended, Rosa gave me a thumbs up. "Word will spread," she said. "Once vendors know, the image they built will crumble." By afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Marcus's name. I pressed record before answering. "Mom!" His voice burst through, wild and desperate. "What are you doing? Jennifer says you've been interfering, calling vendors. You're sabotaging everything." "I'm protecting myself," I replied calmly. "And I'm protecting the truth. You told people I was paying when I wasn't. That ends now." "You'll ruin us!" he shouted. "You did that yourself," I said. "Actions have consequences, Marcus. I won't be your scapegoat." The silence that followed was brittle, full of rage he couldn't shape into words. Finally, he hissed. "You'll regret this. Everyone will know what you are." "Good," I said quietly. "Let them. They'll know the truth." I hung up, saving the call, my hand steady. That evening, Rosa and I sat together again, piecing through the evidence. Photos of half-decorated ballrooms, recordings of frantic threats, the letter folded neatly beside us. My kitchen table had turned into a war room. "You have enough to crush them," Rosa said. "But the real question, how do you want to use it?" I stared at the ring glinting softly in the lamplight. For years, I'd lived quietly, bending under the weight of others' expectations. But now, with proof in my hands, I saw the choice clearly. I didn't want revenge for its own sake. I wanted dignity, truth. A line drawn so firmly it could never be erased. The wedding day crept closer, and with it, the pressure. More texts from Marcus poured in, angry, pleading, manipulative. I saved every one. Sarah's messages dripped with superiority. "You're embarrassing yourself. You're destroying our future. People are laughing at you." I saved those too. Then came a call from Mrs. Peterson down the street, her voice hushed with neighborhood gossip. "Maria, I've heard whispers about Marcus's wedding. Vendors walking away, payments late. People are starting to talk." I thanked her, warmth flooding me. It wasn't just me and Rosa anymore. The truth was already seeping out, carried on small-town voices that traveled faster than any formal announcement. By the time the wedding day arrived, Denver was covered in snow, thick flakes swirling like dancers. I woke early, brewed strong coffee, and waited. Rosa stationed herself near the venue with her camera, sending me updates every hour. Her first message: florists packing up. Half the flowers returned to the van. No payment. An hour later, caterers leaving, workers angry, guests confused. Photos followed, white bouquets dumped back into boxes, silver trays carried out untouched, guests huddled under umbrellas, whispering. The ballroom looked hollow, chandeliers glowing above scattered chairs. Marcus called repeatedly. I let each one go to voicemail, recording every word. "Mom, please, this is falling apart. Guests are here. Nothing's ready. You have to help. Mom, they're laughing at us. Do you understand? Our reputation? Gone. Please, I'll do anything." The desperation in his voice was raw, stripped of arrogance, but I didn't answer. Then Rosa sent the photo that stilled me. Sarah in her white dress, mascara streaking her cheeks, snow streaking down the window behind her. For a second, guilt flickered. Had I gone too far? Was this cruelty, not justice? But then I remembered the note, his handwriting neat and merciless. "Be thankful I let you help." I remembered the legal threats, the accusations, the ban. My spine straightened. Justice isn't always gentle. By late afternoon, the venue was chaos. Guests drifted out early, muttering. Vendors gossiped openly. Rosa caught a snippet on video. They promised the mother would cover it. Guess she didn't. The image of their perfect day dissolved in real time. That night, as snow piled against my windows, a pounding shook my front door. I peered through the peephole. Marcus and Sarah stood there, soaked and desperate, their finery wilted into rags of silk and wool. I opened the door just enough to let the cold air rush in. "What do you want?" "Mom," Marcus begged, stepping forward, melting snow dripping onto my rug. "Please, the wedding is ruined. Vendors gone. Guests humiliated. Help us fix this." Sarah clutched his arm, her voice cracked. "Please, Maria, just wire the money. We can salvage something." I looked at them. My son, his bride, reduced to shivering figures. My heart ached, but my voice stayed firm. "Salvage what? You banned me? You treated me like a bank account. This is the price of greed." Marcus's eyes filled with tears, his voice breaking. "It was a mistake. Sarah's idea about the image. I'm sorry. Please, for old time's sake." The words I had waited decades to hear. But they came too late, coded in desperation, not love. "No," I said quietly. "This is your lesson. Learn it well." I closed the door gently but firmly, the latch clicking into place. Their footsteps retreated into the storm. Inside, I set the recorder back on the table beside my ring. Outside, snow roared like applause. For the first time, I felt free. The morning after the storm, Denver was quiet, blanketed in a thick layer of snow. Sunlight reflected off rooftops and frozen branches, turning the world into something that looked clean and new. I stood at my window, coffee warming my hands, and thought about the sound of the door clicking shut the night before. That sound echoed louder than Marcus's desperate voice. It marked the end of something, but also the beginning of my freedom. The phone sat silent on the table. No more buzzing, no more threats. Only a few unread texts that I didn't bother opening. I scrolled past his name with the same calmness I once used to grade papers after school. His voice, once so powerful in my life, had become just another file saved on a recorder. By midday, Rosa came by with her camera bag slung over her shoulder. She carried a folder of printed photos, snapshots from the wedding day. Florists packing up half-used blooms, a catering truck idling aimlessly, guests huddled under umbrellas whispering. In one picture, Sarah's dress billowed like a ghost against the snow, her face streaked with tears. I flipped through them slowly, each image a reminder of how quickly illusions collapse when built on selfishness. "Proof," Rosa said simply, in case they try to spin their story. I nodded, tucking the folder away. I didn't feel the urge to spread them. Justice had already done its work. The humiliation had played out publicly without me lifting a finger beyond saying no. That afternoon, Mrs. Peterson from down the street knocked on my door with a casserole dish. "I just wanted to check on you, dear," she said kindly. "Word is, Marcus's wedding didn't quite go as planned. People are saying you stood up for yourself." Her eyes held no judgment, only quiet pride. I accepted the dish with gratitude, realizing how deeply I had feared being painted as the villain. Instead, I found myself surrounded by quiet support. Neighbors who remembered my sacrifices, my long evenings grading homework, my steady presence at block parties even after my husband left. They hadn't forgotten. The silence in my house no longer felt heavy. It felt earned. Days turned into weeks. Marcus texted once or twice, apologies mixed with excuses. We were under pressure. Sarah cared too much about appearances. Maybe I got carried away. But the words were hollow. No visit, no face-to-face conversation, just digital scraps tossed into the void. I didn't respond. Some doors, once closed, aren't meant to be reopened so quickly. Instead, I turned inward. I started teaching a small tutoring group out of my kitchen, kids from the neighborhood who needed extra help with reading. Their laughter filled the rooms again, chasing away the echoes of loneliness. I found myself looking forward to each lesson, their energy a balm. Rosa visited often, dropping by with coffee and updates about her photography gigs. We shared quiet victories, her daughter thriving in a new job, my students improving week by week. Our friendship, once just a neighborly bond, had deepened into something sturdier, forged in the fire of betrayal and survival. One evening, as we sat drinking tea, she looked at me with a smile. "You know, Maria, you could have wired the money. You could have caved like he expected, but you didn't. That's what people will remember, not the ruined wedding, but your strength." Her words sank deep. I thought about Marcus as a boy, hiding from thunderstorms in my lap, whispering that I was the strongest person he knew. Maybe, in a way, I had kept that promise to him, even if he didn't recognize it now. Strength doesn't always look like protection. Sometimes it looks like refusal. Sometimes it's teaching your child a lesson by letting consequences speak louder than comfort. I walked her to the door that night, the street outside glowing with winter lights. Snow crunched under her boots, the sound sharp and clean. Inside, I turned off the lamps and stood in the quiet, the recorder and ring still resting side by side on my table. They had become symbols of something larger. The ring, passed down through generations, whispering of resilience. The recorder, modern and unassuming, humming with captured truth. Together, they told a story of dignity reclaimed. In the end, Marcus and Sarah moved forward in their own way. Rumors said they downsized, canceled their honeymoon, tightened their circle of friends. Maybe they learned, maybe they didn't. That part was no longer mine to control. What I did control was my own story, and I chose to tell it not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because here's the truth I want to leave behind. Love without respect is just an empty transaction. Family without honesty is just a performance. And dignity, once reclaimed, is worth more than any castle or honeymoon suite. So I'll keep teaching. I'll keep opening my door to neighbors who knock with casseroles or stories. I'll keep sitting at this kitchen table, sipping tea, with the ring on my hand and the recorder tucked away as a quiet reminder. And if anyone ever asks me what happened that winter, I'll say this. My son sent me a bill instead of an invitation. I said no. And that no turned out to be the most powerful yes to myself I had ever spoken. Now, let me ask you, what would you do if someone you loved demanded your silence in exchange for your money? If this story speaks to you, share it. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I'd love to know. And if you believe in dignity, in truth, in the quiet strength of ordinary people, join us here at Roots and Secrets. Like, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Because sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that finally says, enough.